How many who succumbed to sexual immorality were first weakened spiritually by materialism?
What the hell?
Looney Lett is back, and he's going to talk to us about the dangers of materialism.
Materialism.
Well, he wears these bad boys and builds these totally affordable buildings. Stephen Lett warning us against materialism is like Liver King telling us not to take steroids. In other words, a complete joke. But we're here for a good time, not a long time, so sit back, relax, and let's listen together to this crazy new talk. You know what to do with every ExJW video, hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep sending our love to the governing body.
Now, if we think about Jesus' words in today's text, give us today our bread for this day, there's really indirect counsel against materialism. See, Jesus didn't say to pray for our daily meat or some other luxury food item. He didn't even say that we should pray for a month's supply of bread. Pray for and be content with our bread for the day.
This verse is not a warning against materialism. Nothing even resembles that. Did you know the Lord's Prayer is actually an indirect counsel against eating vegetables? Yes, Jesus didn't say, give us our daily veggies.
This is big brain time.
Checkmate, vegans. You see how stupid that sounds, Steven? We're in the first 30 seconds and you're already spewing nonsense.
But as we know, a sizable number of Jehovah's people today are being distracted by materialism. So since this is not an imagined, but it's a real danger to Jehovah's people, let's discuss the theme, beware of the power of materialism.
You know what is a real danger to Jehovah's people, Stephen? Not having enough to eat. Millions of your followers live under the poverty line, and they could really use some food to give to their children. But what do they get instead? A talk on the dangers of money. You can't make this up.
I recall the story of a sister and her two sons who were exiled to Siberia. Now, they were very poor. In fact, they were so poor, at times they had to literally eat the bark off trees to survive. But they were happy because they were all in the truth.
Oh, shut the fuck up. I want to see you eating bark to survive. I think that will wipe that stupid grin off your face.
But years passed, and the three of them had opportunity to immigrate to the United States. The two sons got excellent jobs, high-paying jobs as machinists, but in their material prosperity, both sons fell out of the truth. The sister tearfully remarked, "I would rather be back in Siberia, eating the bark off trees to survive, but with my two sons still in the truth."
I totally believe that comment, by the way. The words of a mother who is so indoctrinated, she'd rather see her children starving in Siberia than seeing them live in prosperity, all because they don't share her beliefs anymore.
Well, numerous other experiences could be related that illustrate the power of materialism. In fact, it may well be that Satan's most effective trap against Jehovah's people in these last days is materialism.
Wait, isn't sexual immorality the #1 cause for disfellowshipping?
But now you might be thinking, well, isn't sexual immorality by far the #1 cause for disfellowshipping? That's true. But we don't have figures for ones who fall away to materialism. They're not disfellowshipped. And furthermore, how many who succumb to sexual immorality were first weakened spiritually by materialism?
I don't know, Steven. Do you have any data to work with here? Or did you just take this hypothesis out of your ass? This is such a wild take. I've heard of watching porn leading to immorality, but materialism leading to immorality too? Yeah, I definitely get really horny when my bank account is not in the negatives. I just gotta fornicate, you feel me?
Well, at least we can say that materialism is one of Satan's most effective tools or traps against Jehovah's people today. And no wonder that humans in Satan's world are bombarded with so many advertising messages designed to make us want things even if we don't need these things.
Like the Bible Museum you're building in Patterson?
There was an Awake magazine a while back that discussed how that Americans may be bombarded with up to 1,600 advertising messages every day. Imagine that. And none of us can feel we're immune to this pressure, that it can't happen to us. It could happen to any of us. We could slowly, gradually begin to desire material things, even things we don't really need. In fact, that makes me think of the story a circuit overseer told many years ago. I was a young teenager. That was over 50 years ago. He and his wife lived in a little trailer they would park by the Kingdom Hall. And he told in one of his talks how he bought a drill to do work on his trailer. But then shortly after he bought this drill, they came out with a reversible drill. And he thought, well, that'd be nice to have a reversible drill. It would be much easier to extract the drill bit out of the hole. So he bought a reversible drill. Shortly after that, they came out with a reversible drill, had a little light on it. You pull the trigger, a little light would come on. And he thought, that would be really nice. My drill doesn't have a little light on it. He was about ready to buy this latest model. And then he said, wait a minute. What am I doing? How often am I going to be drilling at night?
Stephen literally chose the worst example he could think of. Maybe this brother needed a power tool for his work. It wasn't a silly thing like a Rolex-looking watch. Also, that little light comes really in handy, you ignorant goofball. Have you ever used the drill before? Now that I think about it, there's a higher chance that Stephen Lett has held a foreign cock in his hand than a power tool of any kind.
But he told that to illustrate how that materialism can get a hold on any of us. He was being manipulated by Satan's system. But now here's a question. What Bible principles can help us avoid this deadly trap, materialism? Let's discuss two. Now, there are many others, but these two can really help us. Let's go to Micah chapter 7, and let's get this first Bible principle really can help us. Micah 7, verse 7, but as for me, I will keep on the lookout for Jehovah. Now notice, I will show a waiting attitude for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Or the footnote, I will wait patiently. See, are we willing to wait patiently on Jehovah? This certainly applies to material things. Jehovah, in effect, is telling us today, I'm giving you a spiritual paradise right now.
Be content with that.
Don't try to get your physical paradise now. I'll give you that later.
Oh well, that's convenient, isn't it? Almost like there's no way to test if this idea is true. An unfalsifiable claim.
But the question is, are we willing to wait on Jehovah? See? Or do we, in effect, run ahead of him and try to acquire physical paradisiac conditions for ourselves right now at the expense of spiritual activity?
In that case, then anything a JW might do could be considered not waiting on Jehovah. What if a Jehovah's Witness goes to the doctor? Does that mean they're trying to bring paradise early by staying healthy? I mean, perfect health will only happen in the new world. Why even go to the doctor now if that paradise is just around the corner? It's the same thing with money. Maybe, Stephen, maybe when a JW works hard to improve their living standards, it's not because they're trying to build paradise for themselves. Maybe they just want their families to be comfortable or be financially secure. Breaking news, Stephen. Someone having money goals doesn't mean they're being selfish.
Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 says there's an appointed time for everything. Well, Jehovah's appointed our time especially these last days of the last days, shortly before the last day of this old system.
The audacity of this old man. I thought he would never repeat those words from 3 years ago and just try to bury the whole thing.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
But no, he just repeated them verbatim.
Not as a time to seek and spend time acquiring physical comforts, but rather as a time to beautify the spiritual paradise and help others join us in this paradise.
Also, the concept of spiritual paradise is an extra biblical doctrine. You can't find it anywhere in the Bible.
No wonder at 1 Peter 1:1 and 2:11, God's people are described as temporary residents. And it's real protection if we think of ourselves that way, temporary residents.
Yes, the author of 1 Peter describes Christians as exiles or temporary residents because he believed that they were living in the end times. It's right there in the text. The author of the letter, along with Paul and Jesus himself, believed they were living in the last day of the last days, shortly before the last day of the old system. These predictions expired almost 2,000 years ago. What makes you think they're gonna come true now?
Now, the illustration has been used of staying in a hotel room. Now, you know when you're in a hotel room, you're a temporary resident. You might do a few things to make your stay more comfortable. You might rearrange the chairs. You might reposition the lamps. You might buy some flowers, put it on a table. You might spray some air freshener. But you would never rip off the wallpaper and install new wallpaper. You'd never rip up the carpet, install new carpet or tile. You wouldn't buy new furniture. You'd keep it simple because you know you're going to be checking out. Now, even if you ended up staying a few months in that hotel room, especially if you didn't know exactly when you're going to have to check out, you would still keep it simple. Well, that describes our situation.
No, it doesn't. This is such a shitty analogy. Unlike a hotel room, which we know we will only use for a few days, our existence on the earth, it's the only home we know. That's why we try to improve it. Yeah, folks, this is supposed to be an experienced teacher of the Bible. La creme de la creme.
We're going to check out of this old system. We're going to check into the new world.
No, we're not. At least we have no evidence we will. Therefore, we have no good reason to believe it.
We don't know exactly when, but you know it's soon.
The author of 1 Peter also believed it would be soon. Oops.
So we keep it simple. We're temporary residents. When we choose storing up treasure in heaven over storing up treasure on the earth, we are choosing the best portion. How so? Well, for one thing, it brings Jehovah's blessing, and that results in happiness. We all know what Proverbs 10:22 says. It is the blessing of Jehovah that makes one rich, and he adds no pain with it. In contrast, 1 Timothy 6, 9, and 10 speak about how those that go out for money, material things, they can end up stabbing themselves all over with many pains. Now, isn't that a contrast? Blessing from Jehovah with no pain, stabbing yourself all over with many pains.
It's true, money can't buy you happiness, but the thing is, poverty can't buy you anything. Can you hurt yourself by having an unbalanced view of money? Yeah, of course you can. But you know what's also really painful? Being evicted from your apartment because you had no money for rent, or enduring an emergency without any savings, or neglecting to take your finances seriously because of some imagined new world. The advice Stephen gives is not only tone deaf, It's completely irresponsible. It has real-world negative consequences on his followers. And ironically, it ultimately backfires on him because impoverished members can't donate as much to those building projects. What a moron.
Well, we're choosing the best portion when we go for spiritual, a heavenly treasure. Now, another reason, heavenly treasure will result in preservation into the new world, if necessary, by means of the resurrection. Proverbs 11:4, wealth will be of no benefit on the day of fury, but righteousness is what will rescue from death. So, remembering those two Bible principles can really help us. Remember that we are to wait on Jehovah. And he says, spiritual paradise now, physical paradise later.
Wait. No, he doesn't. Did you just put words in God's mouth? There's no verse in the Bible supporting this statement. Everyone, listen up. Forget about good old JC. Stephen Lett is the new messenger of God. Hallelujah.
We wait on him, and when we do that, that second principle, we're choosing the best portion. And we're going to be happy, we're going to get Jehovah's blessings. And if we do this, then like Moses, we'll choose treasures greater than the treasures of Egypt. We'll be able to do what Jesus said, to pray for and be content with our daily bread.
Maybe you should apply that scripture for yourself, Stephen, and be content with what you have, instead of, asking for money all the time. What a tremendous shit show of a talk. Cherry-picking scriptures, fear-mongering, tone-deaf, and a whole lot of creepy stares. This talk has it all. Stephen Lett hasn't worked a day of his life in decades, and it shows. He is so out of touch with reality, hidden in his lakeside retreat, ignorant to the fact that life in the real world is difficult. But Lett is just one of many prosperity preachers, religious charlatans who get rich from keeping their followers ignorant and poor. But it gets even worse. Stephen Lett is possibly the richest governing body member we have. How do we know this? Because a few years ago, Lett, along with his brother, dropped a $250,000 investment in buying real estate. We have the documents. Where did Stephen get $250,000 to invest? Well, maybe he inherited it from his father. But why didn't he drop all that cash on the contribution box? Who knows?
Stop storing up great things or seeking great things. Be content with what you have. It could happen to any of us. We could slowly, gradually begin to desire material things, even things we don't really need.
Of all the governing body members, Stephen Lett is literally the least qualified to talk about materialism. But he has the audacity to stand there with his eyes almost bulging out of their sockets and tell his followers to stay poor. Hey Stephen, fuck off.
Boo this man!
So let me know what you thought of Looney Lett's new talk in the comments below. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for keeping the channel running. You guys are wonderful. And be sure to check out the rebuttal that goes along with this video. Watchtower begs for a coconut. Alright guys, take it easy, have a wonderful day, and stay away from the tower.
Bah. Goodbye, little sheep.